Joining us now for some analysis, we're joined by the professor at Unisa, Dirk Kotze. Prof, good evening to you, and thank you for your time. The story of Dintswalo spurred the debate today. Whose version was most credible and whose was just simply out of touch?
Well, this is a difficult question to answer, because I think if you ask for each and every person in South Africa, they might have different responses for you. I think what we have seen is that there were two Dintswalos presented, the one of President Ramaphosa and the one of John Steenhuisen. Both of them are, in a sense, extreme positions. Both of them are there to establish a certain discourse or narrative from either the opposition or the government side of how they assess the ANC or the government's performance over the past 30 years. It's a very difficult task to reduce it to a few conclusions. But I think what they are saying is that we have to develop this narrative in order to make a very simple impact on the public perception in general. We can't present a very nuanced approach. But that is indeed what we will have to do. We can't underestimate the understanding of the public about these issues. So it's a new approach of President Ramaphosa. It's an approach with some risks, and I think today you realize that there were indeed quite a number of risks in it, because it makes him easier to be attacked by the opposition and for them to present an alternative narrative, which is the negative or the more critical one. But what it does do, it does focus the attention of all of us on the different issues that South Africa is confronted with at the moment.
Let's move slightly away from the story of Dintswalo. I want to make a direct quote to you, and here goes, Professor. Load shedding is not the end of the world. These were the words of Sylvia Lucas, who sits on the benches of the ANC. How do you think that statement will land with South Africans tonight?
Well, that's a lived experience for, I would say, almost all South Africans. It is something which is not only a few incidents. It's not something which happens now and then. At the moment, we are at stage 6 again. So this is something which has become so ingrained in the South African logic or the South African mind at the moment. And together with that, it is linked to the notion of state capture. It is linked to the period of President Zuma, and since then. And I think for that on its own is possibly the single most important issue that will determine what the ANC's future is going to be. This is something which is not that some people have good education, other bad education. Some have good health services and other not so good health services. This is across the board. It doesn't discriminate against anyone. Especially in the beginning. Now we have the new renewable energy that's already starting to come in. But this, in my view, this is the one single most important issue on which the ANC will be judged.
Well, if you say it like that, Professor, it leads to a secondary question, and that is that, do you think that Ms. Lucas paid attention to what she was saying? Was this a statement that is sensitive to how South Africans are feeling about load shedding right now? And is this statement the one to endear the ANC-led government as they go and ask the people of South Africa for yet another term in government?
Well, I think what we expect is maybe too much from the politicians. They are already in election mode. The way in which we listen to their speeches now, today, for example, but also at other events, the fact that so many parties have already launched the election manifestos, the latest is that of the EFF, very soon the DA and the ANC also, means that we are actually in the midst of the election campaign. So to expect of this event not to be dominated by election considerations would be rather unrealistic. So what she is saying is, in my view, typical ANC election talk. The same with John Steenhuisen. When he presented his speech, it was very much in the same mode or through the same lens that he looked of that of the election. And it's not something we we can expect something different. This is dictated by the political parties, that they have no other choice. They have to do it like this now.
Well, you invoke the Democratic Alliance. Very interestingly, this debate would not have concluded without the Israeli-Gaza conflict. Interesting comments from a Democratic Alliance MP, Mr. Notata, who says to the government of the day, you are busy obsessing with other countries as opposed to dealing with the challenges back home. Is that a way to deflect attention perhaps from the DA's stance on this war, given what has happened in that party over time, some people even being removed from the DA's shadow cabinet?
Yes, I think what we have seen in the last number of weeks or now even months is that the war in the Middle East, the war of Israel against the Palestinians, has become a very divisive issue in South Africa. I don't think there's any political party who can actually say that we have a consensus within our ranks on this issue. And that is why I hesitate to think that it will become a major election matter, because parties know that there are some of their supporters, and that will, for example, include the ANC, that there are many ANC supporters who will not support the position on the Palestinians and fully criticize Israel. The same applies to the DA. The same will apply, I think, to most of the other parties. So in this sense, yes, it is very, very much a prominent issue at the moment. But I think the longer it's going to last and the more the election campaign is going to develop, the less of an issue it will become. We've learned over all the elections since 1994 that foreign international issues are simply not having the same attraction, the same impact on the South African audience, on the South African voters, as domestic issues. You asked me earlier on about load shedding. Think for a moment, compare the Palestinian situation with load shedding. I don't think it is actually very much comparable.
Professor Dirk Kotze, thank you very much for your time.